So, here's my story. It's a bit of a roller coaster, so buckle up. My name is Mike, 35, and my wife, Jessica, 32, have BH. I guess it's a blessing in disguise considering what's happened. We live in a cozy house in a quiet suburb, and Auntie IC works in marketing, and her job requires her to travel a bit. That's where things start to get interesting. She's Alwa how she ended up getting close to one particular taxi driver, Nick. Nick, from what she told me, was this charming goo. He was her regular driver for airport trips, and over time their rides turned into more than just rides. I didn't think ride again, and how they chatted about this and that. Honestly, I thought it was great she had someone to talk to more frequently, even for trips around town. Again, I didn't see the red flag. Maybe I should have, but I trusted her. Drinks with some co-workers or had late meetings. Sometimes she'd smell like a bar, but she always had a plausible issue about her being busy or out late. It wasn't until a few months ago that I began to get suspicious. Jessica's phone was always buzzing, and I chalked it up to work stress and her trying to unwind with her friends. One night she was out late again, and I decided, and she didn't come home until past midnight. When she finally did, she was flustered and had lipstick smudged on Ying. She was with her boss discussing an important project. The more I pressed, the more defensive and hysterical things cooled down after that, but the nagging feeling didn't go away. I started noticing how often she'd request Nick. She even started dressing up more, wearing the sexy outfits she hadn't worn in years. One day, I was cleaning the living of the couch. It was for two people, dated the night she had claimed to be working late. When I confronted her, she said it was for a business dinner that ran late, and then tried to turn the tables on me, saying I was being controlled, but my gut told me something was seriously wrong. The breaking point came when I found a necklace under our bed that I hadn't given her. When I asked her about it, I decided to follow her. The next time she called Nick for a ride, I discreetly tailed them. Sure enough, they didn't go TND, stayed there for hours. I couldn't see what they were doing, but I had a pretty good idea. My heart sank. This was everything really starts to fall apart. After my little detective mission, I couldn't shake the image of Jessica and Nick that my mind was racing, filled with anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal. I decided I needed more concrete proof before I started snooping. Jessica had always been cautious with her phone, but she wasn't exactly a tech genius. One night ND got in. What I found made my heart sink. There were dozens of messages between her and Nick. They were flirty, sent some innocent friendship. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my email. I felt sick to my stomach, but also STR, but at least I wasn't going crazy. I decided to bide my time and wait for the right moment to confront her. A few days later, Jessica told me she had to. Was the night I'd catch her red-handed. I followed her after she left the house, and predictably, she met up with NI-cluded area. I parked a little distance away and watched as they moved to the back seat of the taxi. My heart was quietly approached the car, and through the fogged-up windows, saw them in the throes of passion. It felt like a punk. I snapped a few photos as evidence. My heart was racing, and I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak that I can't even beg. ND tried to calm myself down before going back home. When Jessica finally came home, she was all smiles, acting like then and there. I asked her how her night was, and she gave me some bullshit story about working on a presentation. My anger simmering just beneath the surface. The next morning, I told her I had to leave early for a work meeting. I laid everything out, the messages, the photos, and my plan to file for divorce. The lawyer was sympathetic and asked you till in bed. I sat down at the kitchen table and took a moment to steel myself. Then I called her into the living room. Jazz trembling. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and annoyance, clearly not expecting this conversation. What is missive? I took out my phone and showed her the screenshots of her messages with Nick. Her face went pale. Don't even try to deny it, I said, my voice rising. I followed you last night. I saw you with him. She started to cry, but it on tactic, and I wasn't falling for it this time. It's not what it looks like, Mike. She sobbed, but her words were empty. I can't do this anymore. You've been lying to me for months, and I can't live with someone I can't trust. Her dem ensive, angry even. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her and invading her privacy. I knew you were always insecure, but this is a new low, Mike. Spying on me, following me, that's pathetic. She screamed, walked out of the room, grabbing my keys and heading out the door. I needed some air, some space to think, as emotions. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a sense of freedom. For the first time in months, I knew what I had to do. They're even crazier from here. Things went from bad to worse, and the fallout was more explosive than I ever imagined. After I left the house, I drove around for a while, trying to clear my head. When I finally felt ready to face the mess, I was on the phone with someone, probably Nick, and she was hysterical. As soon as she saw me, she hung up and starved everything. Her anger was palpable, but I didn't back down. You did this to yourself, Jessica. I replied, trying to keep Em fed, and continued packing, throwing clothes into her suitcase haphazardly. You were never there for me. You were what did you expect me to do? I couldn't believe she was trying to pin this on me. Don't try to make this my fault. Yo pie, but instead, you decided to screw around behind my back. Jessica ignored me and continued packing. I'm leaving O.D. Boyle, but I kept my cool. Fine, leave. But understand this, Jessica. We're done. I don't want to see you or hear from the house. As she drove away, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This chapter of my life was over. But the pain over the next few days, I focused on getting my affairs in order. I contacted my lawyer and started the divorce pros all our joint accounts. I was determined to move on, no matter how difficult it was. A week later, I received a call from. I made a mistake. I was confused. Please, can we talk? I was taken aback by her sudden change of heart, but I knew about. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. She continued to plead, but I stood firm. I can't do this, and I've already started the divorce process. It's over. Jessica's tears quickly turned to anger. You're going to regret this, this. I hung up, not wanting to hear any more of her manipulative tactics. I knew I had made the right decision, but tea of lawyer meetings, paperwork, and trying to get my life back on track. Jessica continued to call and text, swinging Biked her number, needing space to heal and move forward. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from an unknown strained. It's about Jessica. I didn't want to hear anything he had to say, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want, shaky? She's been seeing someone else besides me. I was stunned. What are you talking about? She played us both. She admitted everything. I didn't know what to say. Jessica's betrayal ran even deeper than I had realized. I don't see what you should know. I'm sorry for everything. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of vindication. Jessica's true color but herself. Navigating the divorce was a wild ride. After filing for divorce, the reality of my situation really started to hit me. Isa had hurt me. The process was still daunting and emotional. My lawyer, Mark, was a no-nonsense kind of guy. And infidelity. We started with the paperwork, which was a mountain of forms and legal jargon. Mark walked me through expect. I provided all the evidence I had, the screenshots of messages, the photos of her and Nick, and even the récité, and there was no denying the truth. The next step was serving Jessica with the divorce papers. Mark hired a process server to handle it, and I made sure of immediate reaction. Later that evening, my phone blew up with calls and texts from her. I ignored them all. The first C read everything to get me to talk to her. She called, she texted, she even showed up at my workplace once, causing a frustrating, but I held firm. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. On the day of the hearing, I was bummed. I arrived early and met with Mark outside the courtroom. He briefed me on what to expect and reassured me that WED and stressed. She avoided eye contact with me, and I could see the tension written all over her face. The hearing lawyer tried to downplay her actions, suggesting that our marital issues were mutual and that her infidelity was a sin aired every point with calm precision. Jessica was called to the stand, and watching her squirm under questioning was a victim, claiming she felt neglected and unloved. When Mark asked her about the explicit messages and photos, she broke down in tears, admitting to the affair. But I out that infidelity is a serious breach of trust, and that Jessica's actions had directly led to the breakdown of our upport my claims. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I told the court how Jessica's betrayal had blindsided my trust in her. I also mentioned her erratic and hysterical behavior after being confronted, which further ruled in my favor. The divorce was granted on the grounds of adultery, and I was awarded the house and most of our joint assets. Jessie had tea, but nothing more. The judge's decision felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Justice had been served, and I accused on healing. I threw myself into work, started going to the gym more, and even picked up some old hobbies. Her encouragement helped me get through the tough days. It wasn't easy, but I began to feel like myself again. A place of my own. I redecorated, moved things around, and made it a space where I could find peace and start anew. I was focusing on a couple of months after everything had calmed down. I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but a telemarketer. Mike, it's Laura, Nick's wife. My heart skipped a beat. Laura and I had never met, but I knew E was dealing with her own fallout, just like I had been. Hi Laura, what's going on? Can we meet? I think we arranged to meet at a local coffee shop. I was curious, but also a bit apprehensive. What could she possibly want more composed than I felt? Thanks for meeting with me, she said, offering a small smile. Sure, what's this about? I wanted to tell you something about Nick and Jessica. I think it's important for you to know. I braced myself for more seeker. I did some digging of my own. It turns out Jessica wasn't the only one. Nick has been seeing multiple women. All I felt a strange mix of anger and vindication. Figures. I always knew he was a sleazebag. But why tell me this now? Nick has been using his position as a driver to find vulnerable women. Women who are unhappy in their marriages, oh nay of his many victims. It was a lot to take in. So you're saying he's a predator? Laura nodded. Yes. And I think he targets seeing what she did. But I think it's important to understand that Nick played a big part in manipulating her. The revel of the affair. But now I was seeing another side of the story. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm taking Nick to court. I found other women willing to testify against him, and to do anything major. Just provide your account of what happened. I thought about it for a moment. Getting involved if it meant stopping Nick from hurting more people, it was worth considering. I'll think about it, I said finally. Laura, SMT's a lot to ask, but I appreciate it. We parted ways and I spent the next few days mulling over her request. The more HT give me a sense of closure. Nick had wreaked havoc on my life, and stopping him could help me move on for good. I decided to meet with Laura F. what I knew, and she filled me in on the other women who were also coming forward. It was a twisted web of DCI served. The case against Nick was set to go to court a few months later. In the meantime, I continued focusing on, but it felt good to connect with new people. I was honest about my past, and it was refreshing to find women who as the court date approached. I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation with Nick. I hadn't seen him since they finally came. I felt surprisingly calm. The courtroom was tense as Laura's lawyer laid out the case against Nick. There, he had used his charm and position to manipulate them. When it was my turn to speak, I recounted my experience. Nick sat there, looking smug and unapologetic. But as the testimonies piled up, his confidence began to waver. By the Osand Act, Nick was found guilty of multiple counts of harassment and emotional abuse. He was sentenced to several years in PRFX solution, but it felt like justice. Seeing Nick led away in handcuffs was a moment of catharsis. It didn't erase the terror of my life. Laura and I stayed in touch, supporting each other through the aftermath. If you thought things were calculated revenge, after the court case against Nick, I felt a sense of justice for the first time since discovering the AICA. She had shattered my trust and tried to ruin my life, and despite everything, I couldn't just let her walk away as I started planning my next move. I knew that revenge might not be the healthiest response, but I needed some form. Captions was something I felt she deserved. I started by gathering more dirt. Jessica had been careless during her affair. Ailes texts and social media posts, looking for anything that could further expose her lies. It didn't take long to find WNG that Nick wasn't the only one she had been seeing. So Nick told me the truth when he called me. With this new AM reputation, Jessica had always been a social butterfly, loved by many for her outgoing and seemingly kind nature. Exposing her T-ating for her, I started by anonymously sending the incriminating messages to her closest friends and family. I'll be to get back at her. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? I included screenshots and a brief explanation of INs who had admired her were shocked and appalled, and her parents were deeply disappointed. I felt a pang of GXT. I turned my attention to her workplace. Jessica prided herself on her professional reputation, and I knew this would be a major blow. I sent an anonymous ETH nick and providing evidence of her misconduct. I knew this could potentially cost her her job, but I didn't care. HE consequences. The fallout was swift. Jessica was called into a meeting with HR and confronted with the evidence. Through mutual contacts, her chances of keeping her job were slim. She called me, furious and desperate, but I ignore yet. There was one more person who needed to know the truth. Peter, a mutual friend of ours, who had always had a bit to support her after the initial wave of revelations. I invited him over for a drink, pretending I wanted to catch up and tea for him. I showed him the messages, the photos, and told him everything I knew about Jessica's other affairs. He find out she had been using him just like everyone else. I thought she loved me, Peter said, his voice breaking. Him. She's a master manipulator, and we were all pawns in her game. Peter thanked me for telling him the truth, and left. I felt a twinge of satisfaction, knowing that Jessica's web of lies was unraveling. In the days that followed, Jessica's life, her job, and her social circle shrank as more people learned about her deceit. She sent me a series of increasingly forgiveness. I didn't respond to any of them. Watching her suffer wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined, but it did bring me able to face the people who now saw her for who she truly was. Just when I thought things were finally settling down, Jessica decided to strike back in the most underhanded way post-Grace. I felt like I had finally gotten some closure. Life was slowly getting back to normal, and I was focused on rebuild as she left. I started noticing strange things happening. Bills and subscriptions that I didn't recognize began to pile up. It didn't take long for me to realize that someone had stolen my identity. I immediately suspected Jessica. She had it seemed like the kind of petty revenge she would seek. I contacted my lawyer and a financial advisor to start sorting out the mess. As we dug deeper, it became clear that she was also making fake social media profiles, posing as me, and posting inflammatory comments to ruin my reputation, my good name. I decided it was time to confront her directly. I had my lawyer draft a cease and desist letter, and started the process of disputing the fraudulent charges on my accounts. But Jessica didn't stop. She escalated as hate mail to my office. My company workers started receiving messages that accused me of all sorts of vile behavior, all fabricated by Jessica. One words like cheater and liar covered my fence and driveway. I called the police, but without concrete evidence that desperate, I decided to hire a private investigator to gather proof of Jessica's actions. It didn't take long for the a new name, but still up to her old tricks. The investigator managed to get photos of her making the threatening P. I went back to the police and my lawyer. We filed for a restraining order, and I initiated legal action against Jessica for identity theft, harassment, and defamation as served with the legal papers. But Jessica didn't take the news well. She tried to play the victim, claiming that I was against her made it clear who the real culprit was. In court, Jessica's lies and manipulations were exposed. The pay restitution for the damages she had caused and undergo mandatory counseling. It was a small victory, but CA legally barred from contacting me and my identity finally secured. I started the long process of repairing my credit. It wasn't easy, but knowing that Jessica could no longer torment me made it worthwhile. Back with the final part of TH, Nellie found a path to peace. and a future worth looking forward to. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects. They were incredibly supportive. They rallied around me, helping me rebuild my professional standing. With their encore, knew I needed to rebuild my personal life too. I started going to therapy, which helped me process the trauma and room my emotions, and helping me understand that it was okay to feel hurt, angry, and even vengeful, but that one of the biggest steps in moving forward was reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. I started to tend to old hobbies I had neglected, like hiking and photography. It felt good to be active and engaged with the world I knew. Her name was Sarah, and we met through mutual friends at a dinner party. Sarah was kind, intelligent, and had tea time in a long while. I felt a spark of hope and excitement. Sarah and I took things slow. We went on casual dates, in respect. She knew about my past and was incredibly understanding and supportive. With her, I felt safe and valued, something confidence. Sarah and I talked openly about our hopes and dreams, and I realized I was ready to build a future with the aftermath. Instead of being scared off, Sarah admired my resilience and determination to overcome such a beautiful trail overlooking a valley. As we reached the summit, we sat down to take in the view. It was breathtaking and contentment. "Mike," Sarah said, taking my hand. "I'm so glad we met. You've been through so much, and yet you're one of the day we met too, Sarah. You've helped me find happiness again." As we sat there talking about our future, I realized how but they no longer defined me. I had learned to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made and to let go of the and now it was time to write new ones. A few months later, Sarah and I decided to move in together. We found a company, started building a life together. It wasn't always easy, but with each other's support, we faced every challenge head-on. I continued to thrive at work. Ideation was restored, and I felt proud of the career I had built. Outside of work, I volunteered at a local shelter, giving our times. As Sarah and I were sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "Mike, I love what it means to be resilient and to never give up." I pulled her close, feeling a warmth in my heart that I hadn't. "You've brought so much joy and love into my life. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us." As we sat there, I overcoming betrayal and finding revenge. It was about rediscovering myself, finding inner strength, and learning cruel, but it's how we choose to respond to those challenges that define us. I chose to move forward, to find happiness to my channel for updates.